Okay, so I have found it extremely hard to get back into the groove of studying after prelims. So this is my form of procrastination, and hopefully by talking about studying, I can motivate myself to study more also. But yeah, today we're going to be talking about mental models to frame your approach towards studying. And I am by no means qualified to talk about this, but I do feel like it's a subject that me and my friends have had some really in-depth conversations about. And I think from like the past 2 years of studying and some of my smarter friends' expertise, I think these some good stuff to share lah, right? So we'll get started. I think firstly a way to see studying, right, is to see it in terms of limiting factors. So in bio we learned that limiting factors are defined by the factor that when you increase its magnitude, it has a direct impact on rates of reaction lah. So in this case it will be like your study results. So there are many different factors that affect studying. It could be amount of effort put in, it could be your concentration, it could be your studying technique, it could be your availability of resources, and all these factors together impact your results. So it's never just one factor that can influence your results. So at least at the very start, if all of these factors are not maxed out, if you increase any one of these factors, they will have a direct impact on your study results, right? But sooner or later, when you cap out on like one factor, let's say you're already putting in like around 10 hours per day or like 8 hours, around there, that's already capping out that factor, and increasing that factor will no longer have as significant of an impact on your results. So in the sense that there's always different kinds of advice in terms of, oh, I think you should study more, or you should be more like focused when you study. The answer is actually, it depends on what your limiting factor is and like what point you are at it depends on what point you are at to choose which factor you want to focus on. And different people are going to have different factors, and that's just a good way to think about it. So I think it'll be good for like at this point to just sit down and think about what probably is your limiting factor, because then by changing that you probably have like the highest yield on your results. Okay, number 2, which links to the first factor also, is the law of diminishing utility. So in the sense that at the start, when you increase like the certain amount of something, you tend to have a much higher yield than if you have already done this thing like so much. You tend to have lower yield and benefit to you. So a good way to think about this is, I've had a conversation with a friend where, for me, I limited my exercise to 30 minutes, but then I realized that extra like 10 minutes or 20 minutes of exercise can actually make me so much happier compared to if I did another 20 minutes of studying, because that 20 minutes of studying is so insignificant compared to that other like 8 hours I've spent studying, whereas that 20 minutes in comparison to the 30 minutes I spent studying is much more significant. And increasing that time I allow myself to like rest or or exercise has such a greater impact on my like well-being and overall like performance and everything. I think a good way to frame this also is like, if the extra 5 minutes or like the extra 20 minutes of your nap is going to add so much more like satisfaction and enjoyment to your studying, why wouldn't you do it? Like in the long run, that 10 minutes probably won't matter because of the significant amount of time you're spending on these other significant amount of time you've already spent on like studying, right? So that's just a good way to think about it. Number 3, I think with every study technique out there, it's always use it as a tool and not a rule. I mean, like we've heard of like Pomodoro or Anki, but these like tools itself, like these techniques itself, they are not bad or good, but it's how and when you use it. And the thing is, you don't have to use it every single time. You can just choose to use these techniques when it's beneficial. So for example, if you are facing like a slump and you need to get the momentum going, then maybe a 25-5 Pomodoro would be useful for you to just, like get you in the zone and force you to study. But if you're already in the zone and you know that you can study for like 3 hours straight, then what's the point of limiting yourself to only studying 25 minutes if you don't need the 5 minutes break? So there's so many different techniques out there, and they're all correct in their own way, and it's just up to you to decide whether or not you want to use them. And you don't have to use them if you don't want to use it, And I think this can apply to like even like more like toxic stuff. Let's say like comparison, you can use it as a benefit, like as a way to like push and motivate you. But if it doesn't help you, then just don't use it. Like you can choose when you want to use your things, right? So yeah, 2, not a rule. Okay, and then there are also limiting beliefs Then I believe Daniel Tamago talked about this in his recent video, but basically limiting beliefs are like the things like you subconsciously tell yourself that ends up like limiting your performance. So I remember when I was like in secondary school, and then my friends would be scoring like top tier grades, and then because I wasn't scoring like top tier grades either, and then I would just be like, you know what, they are just damn smart. Then after I shall not compete with the big dogs, right? That kind of vibe. I'm not saying that I'm competing with the big dogs now, but you know, I felt like subconsciously I already limited myself and put myself in a box where, okay, I will never be able to like compete with them. But that's not true lah. It's like limiting yourself, right? And actually, if you just be like, actually, why not? You know, if you ask yourself why not instead of like why, then maybe that will help your subconscious, you know, make you more motivated to study, and you will do better than if you have the limiting belief. I mean, that's just how I feel. Okay, and then next one, it'll be not black, not white, just navigating the grey area. And I feel like this applies to a lot of life as well. But mostly what I mean is that studies is never going to be like you max out one aspect, in the sense that studying isn't about all memorization, but neither is studying about all just understanding. You need a good mix of both, and different subjects will have that barrier between understanding and memorization at different areas. But you need to realize that it's always just about balance. Like math, you have to memorize the formulas, but then you also must understand the question and know how to apply. And econs, you must be able to adapt and like see the big tree and how different concepts link to each other. But you must also memorize the paragraphs of how to explain these concepts to like get your max marks. So it's just balance of everything, right? Yeah. And then this one is less relevant now since A's are coming in a month or so, but start early, because I think a very important thing about studying is that it's a very personalized experience, that like you can't just steal someone's studying techniques and just excel. But no, you actually have to start early, because studying is really about the getting to know yourself and knowing like what works for you, what doesn't work for you, allowing you to like foresee any obstacles that might come your way. And yeah, that's why it's good to start early, because I think there's this quote in one of our econs answer keys: excellence is not a one-time performance, but excellence is a habit. Right? So yeah, start early. And I think a good thing to do like now, since we've just finished prelims, would be to like review what are the obstacles you didn't expect, and so that you can prepare better for them when A's come. Yeah. Okay, next is to see your chances of success in an exam as a normal distribution curve. So it's like this, right? So I feel like sometimes I always go quite like, because okay, I feel like I've been studying since like J1 like consistently throughout, and then I always hear these like miracle stories of people like studying the last minute, like 3 months, and then clutching it. I always feel very salty, because I feel like these like past year of efforts have gone to waste. But I think it's an important thing to realize is that these miracles do happen and good for them, but the reason why we start early and the reason why you do all this preparation is to maximize your probability of success. Because sure, people might be able to clutch the exam, but what is the probability of them clutching the exam? You always want to like max out that probability distribution. You want to make yourself like the max probability of scoring good grades, if that makes sense. Yeah, ultimately, right, a lot of studying comes down to being a necessary but insufficient measure, as always. And I think why people like study so much, or what's the reason of studying or like doing the hard papers, that kind of thing, when A levels may not be that hard, is to maximize your probability of scoring a good grade. So whatever helps you maximize the probability, then just do it. But it's a good way of seeing why some people start early and succeed, and why people clutch the exam and still succeed. The answer is they both succeed, but it's just that one has a higher probability of doing so. Next is to see the exam as a dance between you and the paper. And by this, what I mean is that what you don't have in your head, or what you have not practiced, you cannot use in the paper. So there is no point. No, I remember I saw this video somewhere, but nobody pays you to copy down or rewrite the entire textbook onto a foolscap paper. You know, there is no point of making summarized notes if it doesn't, if you don't memorize them, the only reason you should like make notes is to frame your understanding, which you then memorize. So what I'm trying to say by this is that memorizing is super important. You cannot use what you don't have. Okay, yes. And then next one is something that I personally am trying to realize myself, but there are different paths to the same results. So I remember like during studying for prelims, I had this whole like timetable and calendar prepared out, and then I was like dead set on following the timetable, and then I would see my friends doing other meta studying techniques that didn't wasn't the same as my timetable, and now I feel very insecure because I was like, shit, should I be doing other school papers also, even though my timetable only said just do Raffles prelim papers. And I think that sense of FOMO distracted me quite a bit from like focusing on what I had already pre-established was my what I wanted to do for the exam. And I think this is not good because you should have confidence in your study technique, right? But basically what I'm trying to say is I think it's good to understand that there are different paths to the same results, and that everybody's studying technique works. Then just trust yourself and then follow what you want to do, man. Linking back, I think it's good to understand that sometimes your best so lastly, I think the most important, or one of the most important lessons also, is to learn that everything has intangible and implicit consequences, and it's good to like think about these unintended consequences or benefits. Like you don't have. Okay, so last lesson is that everything has intangible or implicit consequences, and what I mean by this is sometimes we fail to see the intangible aspects, like the benefits or consequences of doing something. So a good way to explain this is, I think me and my friends, we decided to play Scribblio on the day before the chemistry exam, and we all agreed that 30 minutes of Scribblio was so much more beneficial than if we had spent the 30 minutes just studying, because there are so many other aspects to consider in terms of what affects your results, in terms of like how you feel about studying, or how excited you are to study, or your well-being during the paper. These are things that cannot be quantified, and it's important to like acknowledge that they exist. I think the main takeaway for this is, let's say you are studying like 9 hours already, right? And then although you can study that 1 hour and get the extra 1 hour of work in, what are you trading away? You're actually trading away like the rest for the next day and the motivation to study the next day, because let's say you get so tired from that studying the extra 1 hour that you actually feel demotivated and study 2 hours less the next day. These are implicit consequences that we don't realize when we choose to make a decision, and I feel like it's good to be aware of these kind of things. Okay, that's it for the video. Thanks for watching. I hope this helped someone. Okay, bye.